This is our story of Pokemon's original Sword and Shield. His Steel Ruins facilitates the natural leadership to carry the team for inevitable victory. He's the one solo queue in the Aeos Island, grounded from mateship and sacrifice, always finds a light at the end of the tunnel. The dictate of extreme bulk and offense allows you to command the match. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the story of Aegislash, the dashing, slashing assassin, and how we're going to use him to climb up the ranks of Master Rank in Pokemon Unite. The insane shred of his basic attacks on all of the tanks and the objectives in this game allows you to secure the big kills and climb to victory. So on the screen you're going to see the exact build I use for my Aegislash. It's probably not the optimal emblems, but for me emblems aren't a very big deal. So I want to go over the 5 things that you probably don't know about Aegislash and how to use Aegislash from the 10-minute mark right to the end of the game, because a lot of people think that Aegislash is really bad early, but I could not disagree more. I think if you play him right, he's got insane secure and he's got a great ability to escape if you're aware of where the enemies are, if you're aware of how many boosted basics you have and where the farm is. So you want to make sure you can get your stacks in, but you want to make sure you're doing it safely. Now you need to make sure you're keeping the X speed on cooldown, because here you might think, oh, for sure you're dead. No way. No way, bro. You keep the X speed on cooldown, you can dash away and you can click B to dash towards a farm in the direction towards your base. So you want to make sure you're capitalizing on the stacks early, because you want to get as many of them as possible. And you're really looking to make sure that you can hit level 5, but the sooner you can get level 7 the better. So thing number 1 you need to know about Aegislash is he's best used in the bottom lane. Okay, you need to make sure you got the extra experience so you can quickly level up to level 5 and a level 7 so you can get this menace online as soon as possible. He's super strong, so you always want to be looking for stacks, but never die for a stack. You only get it if you're in a good position. So here I'm versing a Mr. Mime and a Charmander. It's not the strongest lane, but they're doing a pretty good job of keeping me at bay. Now you can see there, I use the Iron Defense. I'm going to replay that. I use the Iron Defense to block the damage coming from Confusion. That normally would have done a lot of damage. So now I'm looking for a stack, but I've got 7 orbs. I'm definitely going to die if I try there. So I'm really just prioritizing some farm, seeing how I can go for a bit of experience here, because I'm going to be able to get them eventually. If I get online with that big Sacred Sword, I can do some big damage to enemies. And so here we got some middle Bs. I'm kind of waiting for my team. I don't want to dive in because I'm very frail, but here we can see no one's really coming, so I feel a bit safe there to go in. And then again, there's some enemies. You keep that X speed on cooldown so you can run away. You need to make sure you're doing that early game. You got to have that X speed ready to run. So as you can see, early on in the game, it's been a really tough start. We haven't been able to get much experience. We haven't been able to get our level 7, which is such a big power spike, but we've done what we can. So we can see there's a lot of people in this bottom lane. I get caught by that Mr. Mime. I should have been using that Iron Defense. And then I'm going in here hoping I can pick up a kill, but that Mr. Mime just lives. I went very risky there to try and get some experience. So here I die and I'm not going anywhere until I can get level 7. Okay, this doesn't mean I'm doing a full jungle rotation. This means I know at this point in the game I'm behind, but if I get my level 7, I'm going to be very useful wherever I go. So here I'm just taking a buff very quickly so I can get this level 7. Now this brings me to point number 2. Aegislash in shield form has the highest defense and special defense in the entire game. He's bigger defense and special defense than all of the tanks, any of them. The only letdown is his HP, so if you want to make him even bulkier than the tanks, you can get him with a fully stacked Aeos cookie. Now that's super important to keep in mind when you're playing this character, because as soon as you hit level 7, you want to make sure whenever you're engaging in a fight or engaging on an enemy, when you're trying to fight them and kill them, you've got Wide Guard on cooldown. You don't go marching in if you've just used Wide Guard. Okay, you have to play a little bit smarter. He's super squishy in his sword form, and he's a mega tank in his shield form.
So it's super important to remember that, because if you're not playing correctly, you're going to think Aegislash is a very bad character. But if you get the small things right, and this is just one of the fundamentals of how to use this character, you can do super well with him. And right there you can see I got caught. I didn't have wide guard on cooldown, and that's the reason why I died. This is going to bring me to point number 3. In his shield form, if you've got your boosted auto attacks, these boosted auto attacks are going to heal you. They're going to reduce the cooldown of your Sacred Sword by 1 second, and it's also going to stun the enemy and shove them. Now, a lot of people think, oh, you have to use your boosted autos when you're with Aegislash in your sword form because you have to do damage. That's the wrong thinking. You need to be mindful. He's an all-arounder. He's not a super squishy. If you need to use those boosted autos in his shield form, it's super important, especially at that Rayquaza fight. That's massive healing that you can do. You can heal yourself up almost back to full if you use 4 boosted autos. And then you're going to get your Sacred Sword back on cooldown. And then you can dive back into the enemies a little sooner, so long as you've got that wide guard back on cooldown. So that's thing number 3. Is super important. Use those boosted autos in your shield form, people. I watched some VODs of these people who play Aegislash, and they don't use a single boosted in their shield form for the entire game, and it's just crazy. However, on the contrast, point number 4 is that Aegislash has the highest burst damage in the entire game out of the entire roster. He's got the quickest burst damage, that's Sacred Sword, along with the 4 boosted slashing autos in your shield form. That will do the most damage in a small period of time to the enemies out of every single character in the entire game. You can do that Sacred Sword plus the boosted autos within the span of like 1.5 seconds. And the amount of damage you'll be able to rip out is insane, because it all happens so quickly and it's such large damage. And this kind of links in with my last point, which is point number 5, is that his basic attacks shred the tanks and the objectives on the map. It does an extra 7% damage of their maximum HP. So for example, if you're hitting a Snorlax with 7,000 HP, then as additional damage on top of what you're already doing, you're going to be doing an extra 500 damage to that tank. And 2 objectives, I think this caps at about 1,000 damage, but that's still a lot of damage per basic attack. And think of how quickly all that burst damage can come out. So that's a brief little overview of 5 things I think you maybe didn't know. And if you did know about Aegislash, well, then very good, you can continue to capitalize. But a lot of people don't understand this about Aegislash. So it's that basic attack shredding the tanks. In the shield form, he's the tankiest thing in the entire game if you had the same HP. He also does a crazy amount of burst damage in his sword form, and his boosted autos in his shield form. People need to start respecting what that can do. It can save you, especially at the Rayquaza fight, and I think he's absolutely best used in the bottom lane. So those are 5 things I think you need to do when you're using Aegislash, especially if you want to carry. And here you can see late game, I'm using my boosted autos to slash and get some kills, and the boosted count is underneath the HP. So now I'm at 0. I use my wide guard, I've got 1. If I hit an enemy, I can get another 1 per hit of the enemy I get. So here, as we saw at the start of the video, I'm looking to just rip into a group of them, because I'm going to land a big Sacred Sword on them and do a massive amount of damage, so long as I've got that wide guard on cooldown. So I just dive in with my X speed, get that wide guard off, go back into my sword form with a Unite move, and just rip out massive damage. And here you can see I've got all my boosted attacks, so I'm just going to smash this Charizard. And then here we go, we've got the complete team wipe to take out the enemy team. So I'm just waiting for the Sacred Sword to come on cooldown, dash over, and we can clean up this Rayquaza. Awesome team fight from my team. That doesn't always happen. Amazing team fight. Now my last thing I want to just point over here is how we approach this final bit. You don't have to run in and score, guys. Be patient. You've got a whole minute and a half. Sit in a bush. The Rayquaza shield is not going anywhere. You let the enemies do their thing. If you've got 100 points to score, it's worthwhile staying if you've got the Rayquaza shield to get that in. If you just dive in and lose that shield, you're losing 100 score that you could be putting in. So you just want to monitor, you want to float, and then so the enemies are putting some small scores in. There's not a real threat. They're not going to be putting in like 100 or anything. So I just kind of sit in this bush. I've still got my ray shield, and the ray shield gives you a big attack buff. So when you engage in a fight, you're going to be doing a lot better. So I'm kind of just floating around. That bush right there, that's a broken bush. They jump from their jump pad, they land in the middle, you dive out and kill them. So it's a really good bush to sit in, by the way. So here, the match is pretty much ended up, and you can just see the power of Aegislash. Right, I've got those boosted up. I see the enemies coming in here. I miss my Unite move, but that's okay. I get United. I'm getting Mr. Mime United as well. But here, I'm still going to win this engagement. If there was more time here, I'm still going to get the 2 kills on them, because Aegislash is so broken late game. The scaling of that damage, a 7% rip of their max HP, it just scales like crazy late game. So he's super strong early, super strong late. So long as you can play it right, you've got to be in 2 different mindsets. But as you can see, if we look at the damage numbers, not everything is about the damage numbers, guys. I didn't do an immense amount of damage, but I provided my team with an insane amount of value with Aegislash that game.